Hi, Rona. Hi.
How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
Terrific, thank you.
Good. It looks like you're in a. It looks like it's very windy where you are today.
It is windy and rainy. We are having a monsoon.
Okay. You're in Newburyport, Massachusetts. Is that
That's
correct?
correct, yes. Where are you?
In Thunder Bay, Ontario, in Canada.
Oh, I see.
So thank you very much for sparing us a few minutes of your time today. I know I've known you in the industry for a very long time, so you're one of the what I would call industry veterans. So it's nice to have a chance to talk to you in person in this sort of format. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. You're very welcome. I'm excited to talk about this subject. It's a brave new world, and even though everybody's being forced perhaps into doing something they hadn't intended to do,
Absolutely,
you know,
absolutely. So how are things down? How are things down there in Massachusetts since the lockdown?
boring. How about in Ontario?
Probably very similar to what you're experiencing. So we're all getting used to working from home. It's we're in a new era as we all know, and but that leads us on to talking to you about I know you've been doing training for many years. So how's the pandemic affected training?
Well, the pandemic, as you know, has affected everything. So I would say there are two places where it's highly affected training. One is in the people, because obviously, the call center industry has had people working from home for a long time. And so those folks are comfortable at home. They meant to be working from home. They chose it. And so for them, their high need for training right now is reassurance. Training is very reassuring for those folks because it makes them believe their company is still investing in them. They're not going to get laid off. Whereas the other half of the folks, or maybe even two-thirds of the people, have had work at home thrust upon them, and they didn't choose it. And for them, this isolation, the lack of camaraderie, is extremely painful. I had someone describe it to me as having a hot blanket pulled over their heads.
Right.
And so their need for interaction with others drives the need for training with them. They need to be able to see other people's faces and have a laugh and play a game. And so for them, training is reassuring because it lets them get connected with the other people that remind them why they love their jobs.
Absolutely. So talking about managers who are watching this and they're used to training in a classroom, how should they adapt then to training remotely?
Well, there are a couple of tools, many tools, in fact, that people have pretty much already become accustomed to using. And one of the things that I find so interesting right now is all of a sudden everybody and their grandma literally is using Zoom to the point where I believe we've broken it. Um, but that just goes to show how easy it is to use these tools. So the first thing I would say is adapt by choosing a tool that your company has paid for, not a free tool. And they're quite inexpensive, whether you're using Adobe Connect, which I really like, whether you're using WebEx, we're on Skype right now, and you're looking for tools that allow you to create the right and most appropriate amount of interaction that you need for your people. So I
Okay.
would say choosing the tools is the first thing. The second thing is taking a look at topics that will really have meaning to people right now. And I think the topics that have become the most powerful for folks right now are listening skills, deep listening skills, and listening with empathy, and how to prove your listening and respond with reassurance and kindness to your clients or customers or prospects. I also think managing tone of voice is an important skill, and also preventing making things worse, preventing escalation. So those are the hot topics that folks are using and adapting to right now. So for a lot of people, those are the first things they're using their new online tools to teach. And that's great because for the most part, they're brief, 30 minutes to 40 minutes. They can be highly interactive with lots of skill practice, which your folks who didn't mean to work at home need desperately.
Right.
So tools, choosing the right content. Also, making sure that any presentations you have are not dull. You know, in the classroom, it's pretty easy to stand and talk to a one PowerPoint slide for 5 minutes. But online, that really should be 5 to 10 slides. So think about your graphics, think about breaking up points, think about making sure that folks aren't being lulled to sleep by your voice and have things to look at. I would say those are the three main things. And then the last one would be to make sure that who's ever doing the facilitation has genuine enthusiasm for the material and the content, is truly excited and can sound excited, and won't get frustrated with people if they don't appear to be paying attention, or know how to draw out people by including things like polls and questions and activities and breakout rooms, and doing everything you need to do in order to make sure that it is a heartwarming and fulfilling experience for your learners while they learn something that they really need. So it's a long answer. I hope it's a good one.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And you know, one of the things that we experience when we work in traditional contact centres, and you and I have been there for many years, is you typically walk in there. If you're a trainer, you go up to, you know, you would sit down with your agents, you'd listen to some calls, you'd talk to them, you'd look at how they're using the systems. How do leaders and managers now actually identify training needs analysis when they're doing it remotely, when perhaps they can't see everything that the agent's doing?
Very interesting. I think a large percentage of our contact centers are investing, if they haven't already invested, in tools that record calls and capture screens. And if you have work at home agents, that's sort of par for the course. So that's the good news, because they can really hear and really see. We always advise people to make sure you listen to 2 or 3 calls or review 2 or 3 emails and look for a pattern of behavior so that you have something that's really worth spending time with someone on. And then find that one pattern, we call it a small win, and go ahead and make the phone call and spend the time with the person. And of course, using a medium like this where you can see each other's faces and role play. A coach should be role playing and working with a representative and helping them to correct what needs to be corrected so that they can go ahead and practice it. And then the idea is go ahead and listen again and hear them be successful. And then that's a great opportunity to ship somebody a gift or send someone a gift card and prove that you truly appreciate the fact that they changed their behavior. So I think coaching can really be easy online. It's about the connection with people.
Okay. And what about, you know, you've done your needs analysis, you've done your training. What about, how do you measure the effectiveness of online training?
Well, online training has a couple of different variations. So one is the virtual instructor-led training. So that maps to your classroom training. And we measure that in 2 ways. One is by people's ability to perform the task that you ask them to perform during the class. So if it's a systems training, obviously they're typing and they're doing the work into your system, but they're just not there. So you can see the quality of their work. If it's soft skills or a blend of soft skills and procedures, then they're practicing and you're seeing, the trainer is seeing their work and able to coach them. If you're talking about e-learning, which is pre-programmed learning and is self-paced learning, or a recorded webinar, usually there's some sort of an assessment or an exam that lets you know that the knowledge has been transferred. But ultimately, in a contact center, we're very lucky because we can see the quality of someone's actual work. And all of the training that contact centers do is observable and measurable because they have to actually use it on the job, which is very different from some of the training that's delivered in other departments.
Okay, excellent. I've got another question while we're talking about training delivery, and that is, when it comes to delivering classroom training, we're all used to getting a group of people together. It might be, 6, 10, 15 people. When you're delivering online training, do you want to try and emulate that using some of the web collaboration tools out there, or do you want to try and make it a one-to-one?
Oh, a group is dynamite. It's great for people to hear each other's answers. With those web collaboration tools that you mentioned, folks can be placed into small groups and actually complete an activity with only 3 or 4 people and then report it out, and the other group can hear what they had to say. You can give multiple case studies, so it's much better to create the energy of what I'm seeing is being called F2F, or face-to-face, what we traditionally call ILT, or instructor-led training, online. So a group is excellent. Some companies don't have that. They have one new hire that they have to train. So that really puts a lot of work on the training developers to make sure there's a fair amount of self-paced learning so that folks can work on their own. So they're not just sitting there one-to-one with the trainer hours and hours on end, because that's just tedious.
Okay. And how do you make sure that, you're training? Again, we've all been there in the classroom where you can be in a classroom and you can watch people and you can see if they're absorbing the training, if they're interested, or if they're maybe doodling or falling asleep or looking out the window. What other tools can managers use and techniques when they're actually delivering training remotely?
So you're talking about keeping people engaged and
Absolutely.
knowing that they're engaged. Great question. So all of our online technology or our virtual training technology has things like polling, which is really a quiz question. Sometimes it's used to gather opinions. Sometimes it's used to see if they're with you. I do that a lot in webinars, just to review what was just discussed and make sure everybody can identify the key points or can share an opinion about the key points or an application about the key points. So those quiz questions are very powerful. That's one way. Another way is not to be afraid to open the phone lines and open the webcams. I've seen some great facilitators actually spend the first 10 minutes of a class saying, okay, here's how you use this online tool. Place your own webcam wherever you want it on the screen. See how it moves around? Type something we don't know about you in the chat box and let's discuss that. Raise your hand using that tool, and they teach folks how to use the tools, and they actually encourage people to be chatting through the whole thing, and they'll stop and take little breaks and either flip open the phone line so everyone can start talking or read the chats or a combination of both. But I think the folks who just do the cold webinars and don't let people speak are really missing at least 50% of their learners and the ability to engage them. So I always encourage with a small group opening those phone lines and letting a little chaos in. It's kind of fun.
Excellent. That makes a lot of sense, actually. And talking about just ongoing feedback and coaching then, again, thinking about the contact center environment, if you want to give coaching, you can sit next to somebody, you can take them off to a separate room and have a one-to-one coaching session or have group coaching sessions. What are the most effective ways to do this remotely?
So because we tend to be able to record and listen or read somebody's emails, it's easy to know in advance what it is you want to coach somebody on. So our advice is typically to schedule the time for the coaching and let the person know when you're going to be listening or listening to their recorded calls and when the feedback session will be. And then making the phone call, opening the webcams, and having a conversation as though you're face to face. Ideally, you want to use a good coaching process model. So you don't want to be doing that old-fashioned sort of sandwich method, running through a whole call and telling them all the things they did well and then slipping in the thing you want them to fix and then moving on to what they did well. That typically doesn't work that well. You really want to have some time focused on either what they're doing well to reinforce that, because not all coaching sessions need to be about corrections. Sometimes it's just reinforcing excellence. And other coaching sessions can be about giving corrective feedback and really role-playing and working through and having a valuable conversation with someone, which really only needs to take 5 or 10 minutes if you're focusing on one skill or two skills. And then at the end, gaining agreement that the person is going to actively, passionately work on what you've just discussed right now. So then the coach's job is to listen again right now either to listen remotely because they have that technology, or to grab those first few recorded calls or recorded chats or emails and be able to assess how easily someone has applied what you just worked with them on. And of course, if they have, now you have an opportunity to call them and give them positive feedback, which is a great way to end a coaching session.
Interesting. Very good. Thank you. And when the pandemic is all over, and hopefully it'll be very soon for all of us, when it's over, do you think we're going to go back to the traditional way we trained, or do you think that some companies will use a little bit more online now they've been playing with it? What's your thoughts?
So I don't have a crystal ball, but my instinct about this is that companies have been moving toward work at home contact center agents for a long time, and that this will be their opportunity to prove the model. Mm-hmm. So the costs are lower, you have a much larger pool of workers with the right skill sets and attitude and experience that you're looking for if the whole world can be hired. So I think that we're going to see more and more folks just plain staying at home. The challenge will be for those people who can't bear to work at home. And some companies, if they've hired people who, for the most part, can't bear to work at home, they're going to find out pretty quickly that these folks are lonely and frustrated, and they'll either lose them or they'll have to bring them back in. So what I believe will happen is that a lot of folks will be staying at home, and that contact centers will be looking to transition their 3-week new hire classroom training with their 3 weeks of on-site nesting to a virtual training program that perhaps only takes 2 or 3 weeks in total, because it's extremely targeted with no wasted time and the right activities for the learners, a right blend of e-learning that's custom for them, and games that help people memorize or know where to find things, and virtual instructor-led training where folks can practice and work with a group. Because contact center work, for the most part, is an individual job. It's not like a group of engineers working together to design something. You work alone. It's not unrealistic for the training to be alone, and for group activities to only be created when there's some real value to it. So I see a big shift in the way that contact center training is developed, and it really will require an investment, not so much in technology, but in instructional design and a new way of looking at the fun things that bring training to life, and also being prepared.
Interesting. Yeah. And lastly, can you share any sort of parting tips for managers who are looking at online training?
By online training, you mean training that do you mean like the virtual instructor-led training, or do you mean pre-programmed online training?
Let's cover both of those areas.
Okay, great. And I think you're probably right. I think most people see online training as the whole gamut. My advice would be to take a look at what you already have and identify the content that is the most important for your learners. What do they really know how to do? And start there. I think that the focus needs to be on setting the stage for your learners so that they feel comfortable at home, perhaps sending them all of their materials and gifts and all the fun, kooky call center stuff that they typically get when they arrive, and sending that home with them so they have a nice environment to work in that feels like your business, and then delivering the training in the right order with lots of graphics and lots of interaction. And then, of course, having facilitators who are truly prepared, who are not winging it, but who have taken the time, who've been given the time to prepare so that what they have is orderly and efficient. And I think that's going to reduce the costs in contact centers dramatically and increase the retention of their top performers or their top new hires. I think it's very exciting.
Interesting, really good. Thank you, Ronna. I want to thank you for your time and for taking for sharing some of your knowledge and insights with our members around the world. Just want to wish you a very safe time now for the next few months in lockdown and when we get past this pandemic, and stay in touch. Thank you very much.
You too. Thank you so much. This was a pleasure. I'm always happy to help.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.